Copenhagen is ongoing. Global warming is ongoing. Global climate deterioration. Senator James Inhofe coming out today with a pretty bad distortion of this. This is pretty amazing. This morning on CNN's American Morning, to discuss the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference, James Inhofe says, and just this morning, the meteorologists, one of the groups, has said that they're changing their position. Right. This group is the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, and no, they didn't change their position. This is an exact quote from what they said. The year 2009 is likely to rank in the top 10 warmest on record since the beginning of instrumental climate records in 1850. The global combined sea surface and land surface temperature for 2009 is currently estimated at 0.44 degrees Celsius plus or minus 0.11. above the 1961 to 1990 annual average of 14 degrees Celsius. The current nominal ranking of 2009, which does not account for uncertainties in the annual averages, places us as the fifth warmest year. The decade of the 2000s, 2000 to 2009, was warmer than the decade spanning the 1990s, 1990 to 1999, which was in turn warmer than the 1980s, 1980, 1989. Inhofe apparently hadn't bothered to read the damn report. Marc Marano is with us, climatedepot.com, his website. And, Mark, you got in a bit of a battle. I saw this YouTube thing of a British politician calling you a word I can't say on the radio the other day.
Yeah, Tom, it was a heated debate on BBC. It was actually with a Professor Watson, one of the so-called ClimateGate professors. And, I think a lot of it, too, was a clash of styles. He was the slow-talking British professor against the faster-talking American, and I think he got a little frustrated with me and called me the A word. Yeah.
Well, here's speaking of ClimateGate, as it were, today the Financial Times, a newspaper that I know you would agree is not a bastion of liberalism. We're not talking about The Guardian here. Says the panel, they're talking about the IPCC, and as a consequence of your friends hacking into these emails and releasing them, the panel.
Hey, my friends, what are you accusing me of here? Be careful there, Tom.
Your comrades in arms, let's say. The panel has they're talking about the IPCC, and what they're now saying, they're basically closing ranks. They're saying the panel has a record of transparent and objective assessment stretching over 21 years, performed by tens of thousands of dedicated scientists from all corners of the globe. The internal consistency from multiple lines of evidence strongly suggests the work of the scientific community, strongly supports the work of the scientific community. And Jonathan Pershing, Deputy Secretary Envoy for Climate Change to Barack Obama, went on to add, a barrage of additional information that makes clear the robustness of climate science is actually the outcome of all these hacked emails. I'm curious since you're so gung-ho in favor of transparency and letting it all hang out and who's talking about what and where it's all. Pardon?
I will not release my emails. Is that what you're about to ask me?
Well, I'm curious about your relationship with David Koch, the right-wing billionaire. This is the guy who has funded Americans for Prosperity, the group that in 1984 he founded this and continues to finance it, which has been funding most of the Tea Party, many of the Tea Parties. He funded the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which we debate regularly. In fact, Myron Abell from CEI is going to be on tomorrow, which has been one of the most aggressive conservative front groups heralding these hacked emails and calling this ClimateGate. He's funding this hot air tour. I'm wondering how much money are you guys getting directly or indirectly from David Koch and his sources? Because he's making his money, I should say, on oil and gas and refining, thereof. That's how his fortune is made.
I have no idea, but if we could use 100 more Kochs, because when you're competing with the United Nations, and I'm surprised at you not wanting independent inquiries into this. I mean, you have this is circling the wagon time. You have by the way, are you aware, Thom, that the UN chief called for an investigation? And according to Andrew Rebke in the New York Times today, he's now calling for a review as lessons learned. I think he's backing away from his call for an investigation. But this is political statements you're giving me. Oh, Obama's advisor said X, Y, Z, and this is meaningless. It's kind of like the the memo gate thing with Dan Rather. The documents may be fake, but the information is accurate.
I don't recall you answering my question, Dan. Here we've got. I'm sorry? Mark, I'm sorry, I called you Dan. Marc Marano, ClimateDepot.com. Mark, you didn't answer my question about, aren't you curious where the money's coming from that is going into your pocket?
I mean, sure I am, but I know we get something like 86% from private individuals in terms of, we're not getting the corporate funding you'd like to believe.
But David Koch is funding most of this as a private individual. He's making his money off oil and gas. Wouldn't you feel a little uncomfortable to find out that the oil and gas industry is behind your efforts?
And they couldn't be of any significance, but I would actually welcome that, because we need more folks like that. When you have, again, tens of billions of dollars spent in the United States alone promoting this. Al Gore is spending $300 million to promote climate affairs. You have a UN, you have the media, you have foundations.
Al Gore's got $300 million?
That's what he claimed 3 years ago. 2 years ago, he was going to spend $300 million a year promoting climate affairs. I don't know if the money panned out.
Good on him if he can do that. Okay, so I guess we're both saying we like our sides. Have you seen the special report, Low Carbon Future, in the current New Scientist, where they actually had an independent group, exclusive study for the New Scientist, shows how much it's going to cost us if we radically cut carbon emissions and maintain our current lifestyles over the next 50 years?
I have not seen that specific study, but I assume it's going to support your position. But go ahead. Well,
it's over the next 40 years. It's by 2050. If we cut by 90% our carbon emissions by the year 2050, the goal, the real goal, what should be the real goal, they're saying that the cost of air travel is going to increase 140%. That's a number that you'll like a lot. The cost of electricity will go up 15%. The cost of clothing will go up 1%. The cost of alcohol will go up 2%. The cost of food will go up 1%. The cost of cars will go up 1%. The cost of tobacco and electronics will both go up 2%. And the cost of communications will not change.
These kind of projections, and I'll say this for both sides, whether you're talking about climate model predictions of 50 years from now, or whether you're talking about economic models scaring people about the cost of action, you just can't put a lot of stock into that. The main thing you have to look at is, yes, it's going to increase the cost, but the more important thing, and this is what should trouble you, Thom, it's going to be transfer of decision-making over to centralized authorities, be it the United States Congress when it comes to our climate bill, or an international body like the UN. Does it trouble you when German climate advisors talk about a global CO2 budget for every man, woman, and child on the planet, where an international body is going to be watching your emissions, watching your thermostat, watching your airplane miles?
Let me answer your question. An international body that is democratic, and that represents every nation on Earth, and where all the nations on this Earth are members, some of them bad actors, you and I will agree, but nonetheless, it's a democratic institution, versus David Koch, versus Koch Industries, versus, or Kimberly-Clark, which he also owns a chunk of, which cuts down for us, and Koch is, burning oil. I mean, it's a carbon on both ends, and a handful, literally a handful, and you know this, 5, 6, 7, what is it called? This used to be the Seven Sisters, now it's the Five Sisters, the big oil companies that basically control that resource for the world. Yeah, I would much rather have a democratic institution be making those decisions than the oil companies.
And, well, the oil companies aren't making a decision to control your personal life and monitor your behavior.
You want to bet? You don't think that they're controlling the cost of oil?
Wouldn't you rather have someone? Right,
OPEC is a cartel, Mark.
Right, but say someone's controlling the cost of something. We're talking about controlling you. When they're talking about the level of CO2 control that they're talking about, that's a personal control on your lifestyles. That's what the UK has proposed, a carbon ration card. And it's not, when you get to the level of an international body affecting everyone's, monitoring everyone's global CO2 budget, that's well.
Yeah, well,
that is,
apparently it's frightening to people who make their money off putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Look, Thom, the scare is over. ClimateGate revealed this was collusion. You should be worried about the climate cartel.
Yeah, I got it. Marc Marano, ClimateDepot.com. Thanks, Mark.